Hey guys, it's Thor Sandalwood, Vedic astrologer here. And today we're going to be looking at, what the timing is in astrology when somebody gets married. And this is such an important question for so many people. It's one of the most popular questions that's asked when people want readings is they're looking for love, romance, or just when are they going to get married? And marriage is so important in the Vedic astrology and the Vedic teachings. Marriage is the principal yoga. It's really how we learn about ourselves through the person that's related to the seventh house, who's the other. The marriage partner is the mirror. Now we are going to talk about the difference between a marriage partner and somebody that you're dating, because we find out that that's very different. The marriage partner and someone you're dating is actually two different houses. We're going to find out that somebody that you're just dating, even if you move in and you live with that person, that's more typical, that's represented by the fifth house, whereas your marriage partner is going to be represented by the seventh house. So those kind of questions, is this the person I'm going to marry, is something that we can answer using astrology. And that's what's so amazing about this. Guys, before we start, I'm going to start a little disclaimer. I use the sidereal zodiac, not the Western tropical zodiac, in my predictions. This is not really a prediction video, but we're going to just take a look at the circumstances in getting married. And, predictions are mine. The videos for entertainment purposes only. And one more thing, guys, if you like this kind of content, if you like astrology, you like finding out, learning more about astrology. Also, I do readings on famous people. We're doing cryptocurrency series right now as well. Please like and subscribe to my channel. And let me go ahead and I'll show you guys the chart right there. Like and subscribe. And then the next thing I want to show you guys, if you're interested in a reading, please go to my website, thorsandalwood.com. And we have a special sale right now, 20% off of readings and coupon code Thor. And the most important thing when we're looking at if you're going to find love or your soulmate or something like that is obviously we have to look at your personal astrology chart to be able to make those kind of predictions. So if you're interested in that, go check out my website, guys. It helps me and fund my my channel, my website, and then you get this awesome information about love, if the person you're with is worth marrying or not. And let's go back real quick, guys. I'm going to take us, and one thing we're going to talk about with marriage is the principle yoga or union that this is. The partner mirror, which forces us to learn more about the self. The expression of the seventh house. The seventh house is opposite to the first house. And the spouse shows us qualities about ourselves, whether we like it or we hate it. So in the chart, I'll show you guys a Vedic astrology chart, especially if you're new at this. We'll take a look at a chart and I'll show you what house represents marriage. And let's take a look at this chart real fast, guys. This chart right here was just a chart that I generated yesterday. So it's not a person's chart. It was just where the planets were yesterday. So when we're looking at marriage, let me grab a stylus. I forgot to grab that, guys. When we're looking at marriage, of course, we're going to be looking at the seventh house here. So this is going to represent the marriage partner. And the first house, it represents you, your identity, and who you are. So you notice that 7 houses directly opposite to each other. You have the first house and then you have the 7th house. This is so important because, because they belong to the opposite sign, the person that you marry. It really is kind of what the marriage partner represents is qualities within yourself that haven't been developed within yourself. So the marriage partner teaches you, how to bring those qualities into yourself, because everything about life is about consciousness. It's about learning. is about evolving, is about expanding and growing. It's very a beautiful thing. And in the Vedic teachings, marriage is considered a very dharmic activity. It's a very righteous, good activity. And we're seeing actually right now with the way things are going, and because societies right now, we're in the Kali Yuga and things are somewhat devolving, we're seeing that marriage is starting to become less and less. More and more people are getting divorced, and marriage is starting to become something that people are putting on the back burner more and more, when it's something that's actually very important for your spiritual growth. So instead of just thinking of marriage as, oh, you know, this great fun thing, and a lot of people get excited because they think about the wedding. The most important thing about marriage is the spiritual benefit in astrology that you gain from marriage. It's not about the wedding day, it's about what you learn through the marriage partner. And we can go back to the presentation real quick, guys. And here's the deal here. So we have marriage versus long-term relationship, because nowadays people a lot of times mix the two. Dating is a 5th house activity, not 7th house. So before you meet your marriage partner is 5th house, okay? Live-in boyfriends, girlfriends are 5th house. Marriage is a contract. In order for something to qualify as a marriage, a vow or commitment must be made in the presence of a priest, minister, magistrate, or judge appointed by the law. Marriage shows a level of mature commitment. And, you know, right now there's a lot of, you know, I've seen quite a few videos online. There's a lot of, especially with these, in these different men's forums and different things, that marriage is becoming a very hot button issue with a lot of people, because it's a contract where, yeah, there is a division of assets and so forth. But because you're willing to take that risk and you're willing to make a contract with the other person and do it by law, it shows that there's a bigger level of commitment within a marriage. Even though people might, you know, live with their boyfriend or girlfriend and it's 5th house, it's still not considered in Vedic astrology as important as a 7th house marriage relationship. And let's move it to the next. And, you know, and I'm not judging it, and it's not that things are judged. It isn't that one relationship is more or less than the other. But in terms of karma, the marriage relationship is a deeper karmic connection generally than just a 5th house boyfriend or girlfriend connection. And let's go switch to the next slide, guys. Marriage partners. So this is a big thing with astrology, because remember, we're talking about karma and so forth. Is anyone you marry is someone that you have spent past lifetimes with. The compulsions, drives, and circumstances that lead to marriage are driven by the planets. Not every karmic marriage is a happy moment. For example, a Saturn-forced marriage may be done out of obligation or survival reasons. Most people want love marriage. So that's one thing to think about as well, is just because somebody's getting married and it shows it in the astrology chart doesn't mean it's going to be a happy marriage. When you look at a Saturn type marriage, sometimes it's done because either the family, like say like a prearranged marriage, the families are kind of making people get married, or you find out that, you know, maybe somebody marries another person for economic reasons. There's not even really any love there. It's just that they don't really have much of a choice. So marriage has different motives. So in India, they talk about love marriage. In the West, places like the United States and Europe, we have this romantic idea about marriage. You know, you fall in love, you get on one knee and you propose to them, and so forth. But people don't realize the modern concept of love marriage has only been around for about 200 years. For most of human society, marriages were political arrangements made between families. So a lot of people forget that it was mostly arranged marriages in the past. And let's take another look at one of the other slides that I made. That's kind of funny. This is funny. But a lot of times when you get married to somebody, you find out that the person ends up being a lot different than the person you dated. And there's actually reasons in the astrology chart that show that, guys. And let me show you guys the next slide. This person is not who I dated. And a lot of people complain about that. That's true. When you meet somebody, it is fifth house type of karma. That's when you're dating and you're meeting them. When you marry the person, the seventh house karma is activated. They literally become a new person. Also, your Navamsha chart, which is a supplemental chart that we use in Vedic astrology, first and seventh houses also activate that karma. So that's a really big deal. So there's a lot of people that, they're like, who the heck is this person? Or, they dated the person and they seem so nice and sweet, and all of a sudden they get married, and once literally they speak those vows, and then a week later, a day later, they're like, this person's nuts. What's going on? And literally it is because new karma is being activated. So you might date somebody and then they seem completely different once you do the marriage vow. And it's such an interesting karma. It's like, how could the person be different from the fifth house to the seventh house? But it happens, and there's so many people that can attest to this. And the reason is that because our consciousness and our life script, the astrology chart, is always playing, it is almost like the character who was in the fifth house is starting to play another script once they enter the seventh house, because your consciousness is actually creating a lot of the people that are around you. That's who's actually being created for you. A lot of times people are just playing roles that's equivalent to your karma. Sometimes somebody might seem like an enemy in your life, but to another person, that person seems like a wonderful person. How is that? And that's because everybody is activated according to your karma and your karmic script in your astrology chart. And let's take another look at the slide, guys. When will I get married? So that's the big question, and that's what we're really looking at in this video, because everyone wants to know when they're going to get married. And let's take a look at the slide, guys. Okay, so one of the things we want to look at, and the first thing we look at, I'm going to go back to myself. The first thing we're going to look at is what dasha you're in. That is going to be the main thing that we look at when you get married. And remember, just because if you have a seventh lord being activated in your chart, but you're not dating anybody at the moment, obviously that's going to really show that, your chances of being married are going to be very small. So remember that the fifth house is going to be that courtship period. A lot of times you meet somebody and then there's a courtship period. And then when the proper alignments are made in your astrology chart, that's when you can get married. So the first thing we look at, guys, is the planets. So what planetary dasha are you in? And you guys remember when I talked about the Mahadasha and the Bhukti. By Karaka, Venus is the planet of marriage. It is the planet of love and marriage. But ultimately, Venus, if you're in a Venus period, whether it be Venus Mahadasha or Venus Bhukti, there's possibility that you could get married during that time. Because Venus is the ultimate Karaka of contracts. Marriage is seen as the ultimate contract, where you actually have to sign something. Isn't that amazing? The next period, so Venus is important. The next period we can look at is Rahu Dasha. Anytime Rahu is activated as a Mahadasha or a Bhukti, this is a time that you could have a whirlwind marriage. Usually very fast and very passionate. Now, when you meet somebody during a Rahu period and you get married, it's usually those ones where you run away with them, you get married in Vegas. What is the saying they used to call? Where people just run off and get married really quick? I forgot that saying. But anyways, that's what people do usually during Rahu. It's a very passionate kind of, where two people meet and it's very passionate and they can't stay off of each other and it's just intense. It's usually one of those kind of marriages where the family and friends are like, what are you doing? They're acting crazy because Rahu, remember, it overshadows the consciousness to the point of where you don't even really know what you're doing anymore. It's almost like an entity like Rahu possesses the person and they're so in love and they're so transfixed by what's going on. They can't control the impulses and drives that they're having. And all of a sudden they're driving off, getting eloped. All of a sudden, they're driving off, getting eloped, and they've only known the person for 2 days. So Rahu can tend to do that. Rahu, and somebody asked, I wonder if Rahu marriage is a good marriage. A Rahu marriage could be a good marriage. There's nothing wrong with a Rahu marriage. The issue with some of the Rahu marriages, though, is like if you meet somebody at the beginning of Rahu Mahadasha, a lot of times by the end of Rahu Mahadasha, and I believe it's 17 years, a lot of times it ends in divorce because Rahu's kind of like the one that he brings you into something and then it's not what you thought it was, and then it ends up evaporating whatever you thought. So Rahu can lead to that, but that doesn't mean necessarily so. See, if somebody has Saturn aspecting their 7th house, which means there's going to be a long-term endurance type of marriage, that could cause the marriage to go for a very long time. Let's go take a look at the next marriage. A dasha of the 7th lord. And this depends on your chart and your ascendant, guys, when you get married during a dasha of the 7th lord. Let's go take a look at the chart, and I'll show you guys. Obviously, in the chart, it's going to be, let's see, in this chart, which is Aries right here. Let me clean it up just for a second. Obviously, now being an Aries, the 7th house lord would be Venus. So we already know Venus as a natural karaka is love marriage. But, in another chart, it might be, as a Leo, like I'm a Leo ascendant, the 7th lord is Saturn. So I could get married during a Saturn period, and definitely because that's a time of the 7th lord. So let's go back to this, guys. There's other circumstances. A Saturn period is when people can get married, and that's, remember I told you, it's under social pressure or survival conditions. All right. And then you also have marriage during the under 7th house in Navamsha, okay? And of course, guys, we're talking about things like marriage because it's one of the topics of life. So in astrology, the wonderful thing that's about astrology is we can talk about a person's finances. We can talk about their love and marriage. We can talk about their career path. And these are all types of where you're going to live, if you're going to live in a foreign country. These are all things that we talk about when we use astrology. And let's go to the next. Now, okay, so the issue when you do get married with somebody is even though you might be in a Venus period or a Rahu period or a person, a period of the 7th lord or a period of the lord of the 7th Navamsha, which is the supplemental chart I told you guys about. The one thing that talks about marriage timing, the one thing you can check is you got to check out where transiting Rahu and Ketu are in a chart. So check this out, guys. If transiting Rahu Ketu, remember right now, you guys remember transiting Rahu, like we look at right now, it's in the sign of Taurus. Transiting Ketu is in the sign of Scorpio. So if that's an axis that's happening, okay? So if the transit axis crosses over the natal Rahu and Ketu axis, there could be a marriage. So let's take that. Let's look at another one. If the transit axis crosses over the natal moon, there could be a marriage. If the transit axis crosses over Venus, there could be a marriage. And if the transit passes over natal 1st and 7th houses, there could be a marriage. So we're going to look at those circumstances. So basically, you can be in one of those periods. You could be in a bhukti, of Rahu, Venus, 7th lord, but you got to make sure you check Rahu and Ketu to see if you can predict marriage, okay? Predict marriage. And let's go take a look at the chart. So in this chart, guys, and this was just the chart of yesterday. So we're making this like a fictitious person right here. If I was looking to see and there was a question about marriage, what I would see is, if you see right here, this person, i.e. the chart, would actually be in a somewhat of a marriage time because look at where it's there, Venus, right? That's one of the circumstances that can cause a marriage. The other circumstance, guys, is if right here, you see, because the moon is there, that can cause a marriage if Rahu is there or Ketu is here, okay? That can cause a marriage. The other thing is again, if it's just the 1st and 7th house, okay, that Rahu and Ketu are transiting. So this person would be in a marriage period, once Rahu gets into Aries again. And the last thing is we can't see because we don't have the Navamsha chart if it goes through the 1st or 7th houses of the Navamsha chart. So that's important for marriage timing. So just because you're in a Bhukti Venus doesn't mean that you're going to get married. So we got to look at where transiting Rahu and Ketu are to see if that further lends to evidence that somebody's going to get married. So if somebody's in, say, Rahu Mahadasha, and then we see Rahu and Ketu crossing over their 1st and 7th house, it's going to be like, whoa, you're probably going to get married to that person. It's probably going to be very soon here. And we could even make a prediction within a year or 18 months of when that transit's going to happen. So let's take a look at the presentation more, guys. I got that. So that's a little technical. I know a lot of people probably are like, oh, why, but it just shows you. Now, of course, when we make these predictions, guys, free will is always at play. If you are in marriage period, will I always be married is the question. And no, conditions of free will at play. Are you actively dating and meeting people? Are you already in a relationship? Are you open to the idea of marriage? Karmic conditions can be right. Native has to open the door. So with anything, and I was going to use the story of myself, was when I entered my Venus Mahadasha in 2016, and I had just gone through a pretty bad divorce myself. I went through a divorce a few years before that. And, when I entered 2016, I was thinking, well, I'm entered Venus Mahadasha. I'm probably going to meet somebody right away. Because Venus is the Karaka of romance, of love, of meeting somebody. And, 2 years went by. Venus, the first Bhukti of Venus Mahadasha is 3 years. It's 3.5 years long. It's a very long period. And I was like, wow, why am I not meeting anybody? Now, I thought that these people would just, this person or these dating relationships would come out of nowhere. I thought that I'm just going to go to work, I'm just going to live my life, and I'm just going to meet somebody. And that could happen. That's always something that could happen. But nothing materialized, and I was thinking, and what's wrong? And I even was looking at other astrologers, and finally it came to me one day, and this probably was my karma being activated. I need to start going out and dating and meeting people. It was just one day, just started doing that, right? And that was my free will finally kicking in. Now I started dating, and literally within like 2 months, I met my wife, who I'm with right now. And because the karma was, 2 years into Venus Mahadasha, it was very ripe. So it only took me a limited window. But I had to go out there and I had to start dating. I had to open the door for those karmic conditions to be right. It wasn't like she came knocking at my door. So that's the big thing about when people are looking for love, and they kind of expect that even though they might be in a love period of their planetary period, Venus or Rahu, the issue is you have to go out there and you have to make yourself meet people for that to happen. So when you're going through a period of Venus or Rahu or the 7th Lord, you have to go out there actively meeting people, and your chances are going to be way better because you're going through that planetary period. And I think I have one more slide, guys. And the last thing is there's a lot of things within a marriage is we can talk about, what will the marriage be like? Because a lot of times one of the things we look at is the 7th house for conditions like marital finances. How are your in-laws going to be? You can look at the spouse's career, how society views the marriage, etc. You can use your D1 chart to look at those kind of things. Now, if we want to see how you're emotionally influenced in a relationship, we check the 7th house from the moon as an indicator of how the marriage will feel from the native's perspective. And then we also check the first house and seventh house of the Navamsha chart to get an idea of the feeling about the marriage, okay? So, you get married, we can actually look at the chart and see, well, what is this? How is society going to view this marriage? How is the money going to be? Is your spouse going to be wealthy? Are they going to bring a lot of assets to the marriage? Is society going to look at this marriage with a lot of respect? How are your in-laws going to be? And let me show you guys in the chart how we would look at that. We're not really doing a chart analysis since this is just a fake chart, but let's take a look. So remember, guys, the seventh house right here is going to be the seventh house of marriage right there. This would actually represent the marriage partner in a socio kind of economic way, okay? Now this right here, the eighth house, think of this like it's a normal chart. Now remember, this house is the eighth house in the chart, but this house, because this is like the first house for your spouse, this one right here is going to be like the second house, the finances for your spouse. And right there we see K2 is there. So right away we know that the finances in this particular chart are probably not going to be that great. Also, we can look at that same house. The eighth house would show us what the relationship with the in-laws would be. And the relationship with the in-laws would be rather distant because K2's there in the eighth house. So we could tell what kind of marriage conditions. And as long as that house of Libra is not afflicted, we could say, well, society is probably generally going to be okay. The spouse or society is going to look at it. It's going to be they're going to notice a lot about the marriage because we got the sun aspecting the seventh house. So that's the kind of social material conditions we can use when we analyze a chart. Now, one of the key factors we can look at also is how is this going to be emotionally. Most of what you experience in life is what you emotionally attach to a situation. So think of life as just a movie. Life is just a movie. It's actually very neutral. The meaning that we give to life is our emotional response to life. So even when something horrible happens, say, there's a car accident or something like that, really, if you looked at it, if you had no emotions, you would just look at it as a series of pictures. So our emotional tags that we put on things are what make things relevant. So when you're looking at 7 houses from the moon, that's the most relevant thing to look at really with a marriage is how does this relationship feel to you? That's the number one thing that we look at. And again, if we looked at this chart, we would see, the moon's here. We counted 7 houses from it. Again, we would get to the 7th house of Libra. Now, most charts, they don't have the moon in the first house. Only 1 in 12 charts have moon in the first house. Take a sip of water real quick. But what could we tell about? Well, the sign of Libra right here, we know that the spouse is most likely going to be very diplomatic, very accommodating. And then also because the moon is aspecting it and the sun is aspecting it, we know that the spouse is going to have a combination of features. So emotionally, the spouse is going to be perceived as somebody who's very nurturing because the moon's there in the first house aspecting the 7th house. We know that the spouse is going to be seen as very charismatic and very authoritative because the sun's aspecting the 7th house. So these are all qualities that are going on the spouse. Okay? So in a weird way, and sometimes the charts do show this, that spouse might resemble your parents in some sort of way. Because the moon is mother and the sun is always the father in an astrology chart. So these are the type of things that we can look at in an astrology chart. And so this pretty much wraps up what I had to say about the marriage thing. And I think marriage and love and questions. I know I've been doing a lot more astrology cryptocurrency videos lately. But I think love and marriage, it's all part of the 7th house is one of those Kendra houses. Remember the Kendra houses they're 1, 4, 7, and 10. Okay? Your body, your house, your spouse, your career. That's how society identifies you. That's how people socially rank you within society. And we can see that when we use the astrology chart. Let me see if there's anything in the chat from you guys. Was there anything anyone wanted to add to this discussion about the marriage chart? Let's see. Thank you guys for who showed up in the chat and everything. I know a lot of people like me talking about the cryptocurrency videos, but I want to throw in some teaching videos too, because I want to be a very broad-based channel. So I want to be a very broad-based channel and astrologer, because all these things are important. And these are why the reasons that people, they get married. See if there's anything else in there. Well, guys, I think that's going to be it for today. I think we're going to wrap this up. And if you guys have any questions or comments, put them in the comments down below, especially if you're watching this video after the fact. And I love to hear from you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Tomorrow, I won't be doing a live stream. I have some things I have to do. But on Friday, we're going to have a live stream at Pacific Daylight Time, 7 o'clock. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys. Namaste. Thank you guys for coming. And, oh, thank you. Thank you, Devika. And guys, let me know if you guys have any questions. Please comment down in the chat too. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye, guys.